Hello, I'm Bill Sternberg, editorial page editor at USA Today. Our guest is former Representative John Delaney of Maryland, one of 24 Democrats seeking the party's 2020 presidential nomination. Congressman, welcome.
Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So tell us why you're running and what you offer that the other candidates don't.
So I want to get America working again. For too long, our government's been broken and we haven't done the things we've needed to do to help the American people and help communities all over this country. So that's a big part of my campaign. Building infrastructure, fixing healthcare, lowering pharmaceutical prices, right? Doing things that matter to the American people with real solutions, not impossible promises. To do that, though, you got to bring this country together, right? You have to be the kind of leader who can restore a sense of common purpose to who we are as a people. And that's really, at the end of the day, what my campaign is about.
Now, many voters saw you for the first time at the presidential debate. There's been a lot of commentary that the overall message from the Democratic Party was very far left on issues like health care, immigration, busing, college loans. Is that a valid concern?
I think on some of those issues, absolutely. I think where some of the candidates are going on health care, Senator Sanders has this single-payer bill, and so many of the candidates have basically outsourced their health care plan to him. And I think that's bad policy and it's bad politics. So there's an example where we may be going too far left. This notion of writing off all the student loans in this country, which both Senator Sanders and to some extent Senator Warren have proposed. I understand what they're trying to get at, which is we have this terrible student debt crisis. But the answer is not to write off every student loan. I mean, some of the people who have student loans are wealthy people. That's not fair to the people who just paid off their loans. That's not fair to the people who are about to borrow money. It's not fair for the folks who became an electrician or a plumber, and they need some relief too. So what's a smarter plan is to do what I'm doing, which is to provide targeted relief to people with student debt, but then also invest in early childhood and other things that really matter in the educational system. So again, we need real solutions, not impossible promises, and some of these people are running on pie-in-the-sky ideas, and we're not going to win the election with those.
So two of those ideas, Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. What's wrong with those?
So Medicare for all is a single-payer bill. It makes private health insurance illegal. More than half the American people have private health insurance, including a lot of our seniors, right? More than half of our seniors have some form of private health insurance. Most of them like it. And so I think if we run on taking health insurance away from half the country and creating that kind of anxiety around some new plan they have to get, we'll lose the election by a lot. But it's also bad policy because Medicare actually doesn't pay enough. And if all the bills were paid at Medicare rates, you'd see hospital closures, you'd see a reduction in quality and access. So it's bad policy, it's bad politics. It's not what most of the world does that has a universal health care system. Most of the world does what I'm proposing with my Better Care proposal on universal health care, which is to allow a mixed model. The Green New Deal is very aspirational, and I admire the enthusiasm. But some of the specific goals are just impossible. And as a result, it'll discourage people from even trying. So again, climate is too serious an issue not to have a real solution around.
Mm-hmm. Now, your climate plan would include a carbon tax, which has proved to be very politically unpopular in the places that have tried it. How would you avoid that, and what would you do about the rest of the world that's responsible for 85% of the carbon emissions?
My plan is a carbon fee and dividend. So you put a fee on carbon, which makes fossil fuels less attractive. People use them less. But you take all the money and you give it right back to the American people. So it goes out one pocket and in another. That is actually the right way to do it. Where people have done it, like in France, and I know Governor Inslee tried to do it in Washington State, where you take the money and you use it for other purposes, no one wants that. So I have the right way of getting a carbon fee passed. It's this carbon fee and dividend, and I introduced that bill on a bipartisan basis in the Congress that shows the American people can get behind it. As far as the second part of your question, which is what's going on around the world, fundamentally the United States has to lead, and we have to lead with innovation. And we have to really invent the technologies and the machines that can actually get us to net zero by 2050. And I think there's an obligation for the United States to do that, and I'll do it as president.
How big would that dividend be?
Well, we think the carbon fee will raise about $3 trillion over 10 years. So the dividend will be about $3 trillion over 10 years, and every American will get the same dividend.
And on a per family basis?
Well, if it's $3 trillion over 10 years, then it's $300 billion a year, and we have 300 million people in the country, so call it $1,000 a person or something like that.
Okay. So you talk about bipartisan solutions, but we're in a very polarized political environment
Right.
where the left seems to be going further left and the right further right. Is there a lane? Is there a audience for your message about bipartisanship and common sense solutions?
I think so. It happens to be most of the country, actually. I mean, I think what's happened to this country in the last several decades is the extremes on each side have been holding us hostage. Because to them, common ground, solutions that a lot of the Americans agree with, bipartisanship, they somehow act like it's a dirty word. I don't actually think it's a dirty word. I think it's the way we've made progress across time.
That may be, but you've been running for 2 years now. You've been to every county in Iowa,
I have.
and in the latest Iowa poll, you were still at less than 1%. So as a prudent businessman, at what point do you say, this might not be working, I'm going to cut my losses?
I think it's early. I really do. I think a couple of the candidates are very well known. And, I think by the fall, a lot of us are going to be much better well known. I'm well known in Iowa, New Hampshire. And I think we had a good ground game. So I think it's really early, and I think the debate is really starting. I do think this debate is going to start sorting itself out between these folks with impossible promises or pie-in-the-sky ideas, who Trump will kind of beat those folks, right? You can't beat Trump with a bunch of things that don't work, right? We can't try to out-Trump Trump. He doesn't tell the truth. He lies to the American people. He doesn't have real plans. We can't do the same thing. We have to actually be the party that's got real plans and can solve problems.
So if you were still in Congress, would you favor impeachment proceedings against President Trump?
I'd favor following Nancy Pelosi's lead. I think she knows more about how to handle this situation than all the 2020 candidates combined. And I want to be the leader of this country and the leader of the world. But at this moment in time, Nancy Pelosi is the person defending our democracy. And I think we ought to be team players and get behind her.
So that means, in your view, focusing on defeating him at the ballot box.
That's what I'm focused on.
Okay. Well, we'll look for you at the next round of debates in Detroit. And thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. This was great. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today to stay up to date with all the latest news.